To Present Truth, as we are going to study the topic being the time of trouble, such as never was. This is a topic that we have never tackled on its own. It chips in other topics, but we need to study it on its own so that we understand what time this is. How are we supposed to be prepared for it? And what are our advantages over it? So that's why we have to study about the time of trouble. That's the topic for today. And we are going to read it from Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. Can we read from that verse? Yeah.
And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book.
There are several points that have come from this text. We are going to deal with them one by one. But let's introduce the name Michael. When the scripture says Michael is Christ, but when it says Michael the archangel, it's his personal angel. So here we are being told that who is going to stand up? Point number one, Michael, in brackets, is Christ. Michael shall stand at the time of trouble. And this is the first point. When he stands, what follows? The time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation. No one in this generation has ever seen that trouble. But that trouble comes after Michael stands. When you say stands on this earth, that's what it means. So he's going to stand on this earth. And what follows? The time of trouble such as never was. Those are the points that we are learning. And the other point number 3, at the time of trouble, trouble begins, and everyone of Daniel's people who is in the book of life will be delivered. We saw that point. At that very time, thy people shall be delivered. So we are marking those points. Let's read it again in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 there below. At that time.
At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book.
Only those whose names will be found written in the book. But we have been told these people are Daniel's people. So which are the spiritual Israel at time? At that time there will be those who are found in the book will be delivered. But how do we know all this? Let's go to another text which shows us Michael standing. And then we want to know, where does Michael stand? Go to Revelation chapter 14, verse 1.
And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So
now we've got a clue of what this time of trouble is. Who these people who are written in the book will be delivered. We see Michael, who is now the Lamb, which is Christ, standing where? On Mount Sion, in Jerusalem. Who does he have when he stands? He has the 144,000. And we were told by Daniel that thy people shall be delivered. We are seeing the first lot. That's why they are first fruits being delivered on Mount Zion, standing with the Lamb. Why is it during probational time? Because the spirit of prophecy has said Christ is the Lamb. So when he finished interceding for the people or working as a priest, he stops becoming a lamb. So now we know it's before the earth has come to an end. But there is a time in earth history where Michael stands with the first ones being delivered, the 144,000. Where? On Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Now it says, thy people shall be delivered. Everyone who is written in the book of life. Now, how did they come to be the first ones being delivered? Well, the rest of the world has not been delivered. But we have been told the clue is that they are written in the book of life. So who are written first? We are told clearly by 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17, it says, judgment begins in the house of God. So that's where these people came from. We saw Michael in Ezekiel 9 coming to seal these people in the house of God. Ezekiel chapter 9. A man with ink, with a writer's ink and a priestly garment, going from person to person who is sighing and crying in Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4. And these are the people being delivered at that time of trouble. First. That's why they are called first fruit. Now here, let's read Revelation chapter 7, verse 4.
And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel.
So do you see that these ones are the ones that are being sealed, and they are called Israel. They are of that nation. Mm-hmm. These are the 12 tribes of Israel. And these are the people that the Spirit of prophecy said, thy people to Daniel shall be delivered. Daniel was Israelite, and these are his people. Clear. Now let's go to Galatians chapter 3, verse 26.
And if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed.
Now, do you see which Israel will be there when he is delivered? When 144,000 are delivered. Which one is the Israel? It says, if ye be Christ, then ye are Abraham's seed. That's why we find those who are Christians in the house of God first, being sealed first, because they are of Christ. And automatically they become the house of Israel. 12 tribes sealed first. The house of God being sealed. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17 says the house of God will be sealed first before others. And then we see, after the sealing process of Revelation 7, verse 4, we see the 12 tribes of Israel into 144,000, sealed first from the church. Now, these are Daniel's people who are delivered when? At the time of trouble, when Michael stands with them, the 144,000, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never had been experienced by any nation. I can hear people say, oh, this nation is suffering, and this, and you haven't seen that time of trouble. It says no nation has experienced that time of trouble. And we are heading to that time of trouble. Now, let's go to chapter 14 again. Read it perfectly well. Let's hear, so that we can start from there. Yeah?
And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads.
Now we know, when we are dealing with the 144,000, they are delivered at the time of trouble, when Michael stands. Now, when we are going to quote to Ezra 170.2, let's read more about these people. Let's hear when it says the Lamb.
The Lamb denotes Christ.
We have seen that. It's Christ himself. That's the Lamb. And that's Michael in Daniel chapter 12. In Revelation 14, that's the Lamb. Now let's hear about it.
The Lamb denotes Christ,
Right?
signifying the position he occupies before the close of probation,
Right?
while yet interceding for his people. Therefore, the specific number of saints stand with him on earth while he is yet in the most holy place.
Right. While he is yet, services are still being conducted in the most holy place, which he entered in 1844. There is a period he now comes when he has finished sealing the 144,000. He comes to stand on Mount Zion. That is the time which Daniel chapter 12 says that's the time of trouble, such as never was. The Lamb who is Christ. So the probation hasn't closed yet. But he is seen now at that time, standing with 144,000. We have been delivered in the time of trouble. We know for sure Revelation chapter 7 was talking of the four winds, which were about to destroy the earth. They were held from 1844. But at the time when Christ stands on Mount Zion, these four winds now we have proof that the earth hasn't finished history, because there is yet a time of trouble after Michael stands. So he is followed by a time of trouble after standing on Mount Zion. So it's proof enough the world has not gone to an end. He has stood in a time of trouble. Who is in trouble? The people, inhabitants of the earth. They are still in trouble. So the earth hasn't come to an end when he stands. Now, here we are being told the Lamb denotes Christ, signifying the position he occupies before the close of probation. Which position does he occupy? On Mount Zion, in Jerusalem, with the 144,000. Yeah? It's before probation is closed. That's the Spirit of prophecy says that. While yet interceding for his people, therefore the specific number of saints stand with him on earth while he is yet in the most holy place. Mount Zion in Old Jerusalem was an ancient spot, that city, and the place of the royal residence of David. Did you know that? When you go to Jerusalem, you see where Mount Zion is. That's the royal spot of King David. That's where Michael stands. Didn't say Mount Moriah, which is opposite Mount Zion. Didn't say all those other mounts. The royal spot of David itself is Mount Zion. That's where the Spirit of prophecy said Michael stands on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Read from there.
Mount Zion in Old Jerusalem was an ancient spot of that city and the place of the royal residence of David and his successors.
Right?
Therefore, from that viewpoint, we must present the meaning of the Lamb that stood on the Mount Zion.
So what does the Bible mean? Because when we are talking about Revelation, that's a prophecy in symbols. When Christ stands as a lamb, that's a symbol. Lamb is a symbol. We saw before he came to die on the cross, they were killing a lamb, the actual animal, which was pointing to his body. Now we are being told about the same term, lamb, standing with the 144,000. What is the meaning of the lamb? Let's hear more there.
We are told by the following scriptures, the Lord had made a promise that the house of David in Mount Zion was a light to him and to his sons forever.
We saw the promise, 2nd Chronicle, chapter 21, verse 7. There's a promise that is a royal spot forever. Listen to that promise.
Howbeit, the Lord would not destroy the house of David because of the covenant that he had made with David, and as he promised to give a light to him and to his sons forever.
Forever. That's why now, at the time of the end, Michael comes on the royal spot, Mount Zion, standing with the first ones to be delivered. Thy people shall be delivered. The 144,000 with him. It's still probationary time. It hasn't come to an end. That's why he is the first to be delivered. That's why you see this verse in Revelation. It's these people standing with Christ on Mount Zion. And this time is followed by a time of trouble. This is what we want to study. Now listen to the promise.
The promise was not to Mount Zion, house of David, in ancient Jerusalem, for the existence of that nation was conditional.
The existence of that nation was conditional. Now let's go further to 171, 2 Ezra 171.1. Now Abraham.
Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ, the son of David.
Right?
Therefore, Mount Zion, as in Revelation 14 verse 1, is the eminent royal spot in the heavenly Jerusalem, as David himself says, for there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David.
Right? It says in Psalms chapter 122 verse 5. God is talking, through David, he says there are set thrones. Yeah? There are set thrones of the house of David. You see that verse there. Why? Because it's talking about the royal throne. And where God has made a covenant with David, that his house will never be destroyed. It's a royal spot. Now let's go to the next sentence. David looked
forward to the time when the judgment in heaven would be set up. In that day, there shall be a fountain open to the house of David,
right,
and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness.
That's Zechariah chapter 13 verse 1. What is it that he meant? There shall be a fountain opened to the house of David. In that time. Which time? The time of the end. There will be a fountain open to the house of David. Now we see the lamp coming to stand in front of the 144,000 on the royal spot, which is Mount Zion. Now let's hear more from that book. Continue to Ezra 171.2 there. Therefore,
John's vision of the 144,000 as they stood on Mount Zion with the Lamb is in an incident after this special company of saints had been sealed, and sometime before the close of probation.
Right. We hear clearly. If we believe the coming of Christ is only that one in the clouds, that one is not followed by a time of trouble. That one, even the wicked, is left dead on earth. But this one, the coming, which we are seeing in Daniel chapter 12, is the coming which is in probationary time when the time of trouble follows that coming. So here, it is the time, it says, therefore John's vision of the 144,000 as they stood on Mount Zion with the Lamb is an incident after the special company of saints had been sealed and sometime before the close of probation. So now we are being told after the sealing is completed in the house of God, then before the seal is extended to the Gentiles, that time, that transition from the sealing of the house of God to the sealing of the Gentiles, in between that time is when Michael shall stand, and the time of trouble follows the time of the coming of the Gentiles to join in the kingdom. Now let's hear more. The sealing of the 144,000.
The sealing of the 144,000 is at the closing of the judgment of the dead.
Right. It is at the closing of the judgment of the dead. We saw when Christ entered the Holy of Holies, he was going to do two judgments. One investigation of the dead and also an investigative judgment of the living. Now here, therefore, the sealing of the 144,000 is at the closing of the judgment of the dead and at the beginning of the judgment of the living. Right? Let's hear.
Therefore, they have a great duty to perform upon the earth in connection with the judgment.
Right. So when the judgment of the living starts, the 144,000 now have a greatest job that they have been sealed as servants, a job to do in the work of bringing the Gentiles into the kingdom. So that this seal which is being extended to the Gentiles, they are the ones bringing it to the Gentiles. You understand? Now listen, let's hear.
Their service was typified by ancient Israel when they were obliged to possess the promised land. The prophet Zechariah has well described the time. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David.
When the Lord defends Jerusalem, he that is found there, even the feeble one, will be as strong as David. Why do you see us mentioning the name David, or the spirit of prophets mentioning David, that everyone there will be as strong as David? It will be the time when Christ is standing on Mount Zion, where there is a royal throne of David, which has been put at the beginning, and God made a covenant with it, so that that does not come to an end. That's where the 144,000 are there as of David. You understand? In
that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David.
That's Zechariah chapter 12, verse 8 up to 11. That's where we are reading.
And the house of David shall be as God,
right,
as the angel of the Lord before them.
Right.
And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications.
So that's where people will be coming to worship. The spirit of grace will be there.
And supplication.
And supplication will be there. Those are the festivals. Yeah? The 144,000 are saved on that day is a day of Pentecost. And what will be amongst these people? The spirit of grace and of supplication. Now, and what?
And they shall look upon me, whom they have pierced,
right,
because he died for their sins.
Right.
And they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son.
Right. So you see how they will now look at Christ, who was nailed to the cross, and start mourning that, is this the man who died on the cross? The 144,000 will look upon him and mourn, seeing that this story which started in AD 31 until now, when we are saved, was really a true story, and we are in front of the person who hanged on the cross for our salvation. That will make us mourn. It's the Bible that is saying in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 8 up to 11. Right, let's hear more.
And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son.
Right.
And shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn.
That will make us mourn when we watch Michael standing on Mount Zion, looking at him and saying, this is the very man from the beginning to the end who has been with us throughout the world, and who the world pierced on the cross for our salvations, for our sin. This is the very man It says the 144,000 will mourn and will weep as if weeping for the only child. It's the Bible saying that. And what? And let's hear.
What a wonderful experience
It will be a wonderful experience
when we fully comprehend the love of God and the price paid for our redemption.
When we finally meet Michael standing on Mount Zion, it will be a wonderful experience, and it will be a mournful experience. The Bible says it. And then let's go to the next paragraph, point 3 there. The prophet Micah.
The prophet Micah calls the 144,000 the remnant of Jacob.
The prophet Micah calls the 144,000 remnant. Yeah? And
they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many people as a dew from the Lord, as the showers upon the grass, that tarrieth not for man, nor waiteth for the sons of men. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the flocks of sheep, who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. Thine hand shall be lifted up upon thine adversaries, and all thine enemies shall be cut off. And I will execute vengeance in anger and fury upon the heathen, such as they have not heard.
This is Micah chapter 5, verse 6 up to verse 15. You can read for yourself. This is future to us, and this is what God is coming to do. And then let's read from 172, 2SR 172.2. And we're reciting Revelation chapter 14. We have seen in verse 1 that John saw the 144,000 standing on Mount Zion. But now let's go to verse 2 of Revelation 14.
And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters,
right?
And as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sang as it were a new song before the throne, and before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth.
You see, these are thy people. That's why the Spirit of Prophet says, thy people to Daniel will be delivered. These are the only ones delivered at that time. Meaning there's still more to come, but these are the first fruits to be delivered at that time. Now here it says, they are the only ones who are learning that song. What song it is, we go further with 2SR 172.3, right? The song.
The song was sung in heaven by heavenly beings.
So you see, this, where was this song being sung? Because these are the 144,000 who have been delivered. So they might not learn that song from the rest who haven't been delivered. But there is somewhere where this song was being sung. And the Spirit of Prophecy clearly says that song was in heaven, was being sung by the heavenly universe, but only learned by the 144,000. Let's hear more. The song was sung.
The song was sung in heaven by heavenly beings before the throne and before the beasts and the elders. Therefore, it is evident that the judgment was in progress.
Right.
Note that the 144,000 did not sing, but they only could learn the song as it was sung in heaven. That is, they alone understood the heavenly truth in that particular time and their position in connection with the message they must bear.
So, they are standing on a feast of Pentecost. No one else is standing with them on a feast of Pentecost. But Scripture clearly says that's a song which was being sung in heaven. So what is it? This was a truth that was only practiced in heaven. The festivals are all a design of heaven, which Moses was shown and said, you build the tabernacle according to the design in heaven. But who are the first who knew that design? 144,000 singing. They are learning that song.
Yeah.
They sang as it were a new song. So it means it was a new song they are learning. They are the only one with the heavenly system of worship, which was not with everybody. And then it's so true. When you go to Isaiah chapter 4, it tells us clearly 7 women were eating their own bread, except the branch of the Lord was eating, was fruitful, was singing this song, was keeping the festivals, was keeping the statutes and commandments and judgments and testimonies. That is the song which came to Elijah in Malachi chapter 4. Elijah was given a message by God of the statutes and judgment to teach the 144,000 first. This is a song coming from heaven, which the 144,000 were singing, and on Mount Zion on a day of Pentecost. Would you imagine? The first rain, the former rain, came on a day of Pentecost. And those who received that former rain were 120 who only heard that song on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. And now in our time, the 144,000, on the day they received later on, are the only ones who learned this new song from heaven, while the rest were eating their own bread, wearing their own apparel, only being called by the name of Christ. This is what we are learning here. Let's hear the note that.
Note that the 144,000 did not sing, but they only could learn the song as it was sung in heaven. That is, they alone understood the heavenly truth in that particular time and their position in connection with the message they must bear.
Don't worry if you see you are the only one keeping the festival. Don't worry. The Bible clearly says they are the only ones who knew the heavenly truth at that time. So that's the song that they were singing, which they had learned. It was a new song of the heavenly services. And they were on the 144,000. They were still now ready to be servants to work throughout the Gentile world so that they join in that song. Now here, let's hear.
While some of the saints shall be laid to sleep in the time of the loud cry, it is made clear by Revelation 15 verse 1 and 2 that all who are alive after probation has closed and before the commencement of the pouring out of the plagues will be translated without tasting death.
After all who are alive, after probation is closed, and before the commencement of the pouring of the plagues, after the time of trouble such as never was, it will be the time where the 666 is poured to the Gentile world. Because the 666 of the church is finished. Those who refused to get the new song, which is the seal of God, have already been under Ezekiel 9 slaughter. And then after that, that gospel is extended to the Gentile world by the 144,000, who now are educated about these 4 laws, the statutes, the commandments, judgments, testimonies. And those who receive that message are sealed, but those who are not will be left in the Gentile world so that the 7 last plagues come to them. But then here we are told, before those 7 last plagues are poured to them, anyone alive from that time will be translated without tasting death. Now let's hear more. Let's read from the verse there. And I saw another sign in heaven. That's Revelation chapter 12. Yeah?
And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having
That's Revelation chapter 15.
Yeah. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues.
Right?
For in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass, mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God.
Remember when we were talking about the thrones, that there was a throne where there was a sea of glass, which was on Revelation chapter 4. Now that is the earthly throne that we saw, the stationary one. Now what do we know? We see the purpose of that throne. It was to remove the sins of those who sinned in the earth, for the planet earth. Now they are seen, those who have already overcome the mark of the beast. They are in front of that throne. You understand? That was Revelation chapter 4. Now here we are seeing those who have already overcome the mark of the beast from the Gentile world. They are now in front of that throne. Yeah, let's hear.
The sea of glass is a symbol of life eternal.
The sea of glass only is a symbol, because glass cannot be seen.
Yeah,
so that's a symbol. It's a symbol of eternal life, right?
Inasmuch as all who had gotten the victory stand on the sea, it denotes that they have passed from death to life, and their destination now is God and New Jerusalem.
That is their destination. They have now received the seal of God, and now on their forehead is God, New Jerusalem. They have overcome the mark of the beast. Now let's hear from this CET 100.1. CET, the book CET 100. Then I saw that Jesus would not leave the most holy place until every case was decided, either for salvation or destruction, and that the wrath of God could not come until Jesus had finished his work in the most holy place, laid off his priestly attire, and clothed himself with the garments of vengeance. Right. So ultimately, at the end, we have two people. One with the mark of the beast, and one with the seal of the living God. No more plenty churches that we have been told. We will be having two people. One is either sealed, the seal of the living God, God, New Jerusalem, and the glorious star. And the other is the mark of the beast. Those are the two churches that we have at the end. Now here it says, one, let's see the points. Jesus, which is Michael, leaves that's what we have seen in CET. We saw Jesus leaves the most holy place when every case is decided, and when he puts on the garments of vengeance. So you see, when he comes out of the Holy of Holies, he's not going to step in the cloud and take the saints. No, he puts on the garment of vengeance. Yeah? And then the wrath of God follows. Yeah? Let's read CET.2 there where you are reading 100.2. Then what happens?
Then Jesus will step out from between the Father and men, and God will keep silence no longer, but pour out his wrath on those who have rejected his truth. I saw that the anger of the nations, the wrath of God, and the time to judge the dead were separate and distinct, one following the other. The nations are now getting angry, but when our high priest has finished his work in the sanctuary, he will stand up, put on the garments of vengeance, and then the 7 last plagues will be poured out.
Now, at this time when he is coming, is the time where there is wars in the nations. It's the anger of the nations. This is the time where Michael stands. But at the time when now he steps, we saw the two comings of Christ. The first coming, where he comes as Michael, there's anger with nations. There's wars. And then when he finishes with the church, and he has already saved the 144,000, he now extends that same message to the Gentiles. And when every case has been decided for the seal or for the mark of the beast, then he leaves the Holy of Holies, puts on the garment of vengeance, of God's wrath, and stands in between to have mercy to those who have received the seal of God and those who have rejected. The 7 last plagues are poured to those who have rejected. So we saw that his comings were twice. The first one is Daniel chapter 12, when he comes, and then the time of trouble continues. And then the second one, the same one, Daniel chapter 12, is together with Revelation 14, where he is standing with 144,000 who are called Daniel's people, are delivered, and they are the only ones saved at that time. And then them are servants who are going to work in the Gentile world and bring the Gentile world. That's where we find them in Matthew chapter 25, verse 30, 31 up. And they say, when he comes, when the Son of Man comes, all will be in front of him. He's sitting on the throne. That's the first coming. And then we see the second coming, when he leaves the Holy of Holies and all the cases of the Gentiles have been decided. Then he stands in between the wrath of God. We have read it in CET 100 and 100.2. And then this is the time when the whole general population has been closed. For everyone has received it, either the mark of the beast or the seal of God. It's another coming. And this is where there is no nation now fighting that time. It is the time when now those who have received the mark of the beast start receiving their judgment, which is the 7 last plagues, which are found in Revelation chapter 16. So you can see the sequence of events in the time of trouble, such as never was. So this trouble comes when the people are deciding for God, receiving the seal in hardship, because the 4 winds have been let loose. And also those who received the mark of the beast, the 7 last plagues going to them, and you can see them in Revelation chapter 16, all 7 plagues coming to those who have rejected, while those who have accepted the truth at that time, joined the 144,000, are in the kingdom. It is during the time of trouble, such as never was, because the 4 winds of Revelation chapter 7, verse 1 have been let loose, and it's chaotic in the whole world. That's the time of trouble, such as never was. Now, if we read again in Testimonies, volume 6, page 395, read there.
The anger of the nations will follow upon the 2 horned beasts' decree that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
Now that's what starts the time of trouble, such as never was. Now, because the 2 horned beast now is coming into play. For we are now during the time of the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13. So Revelation 13 verse 1 up to 10 is where we are. But then when it starts, Revelation 13 verse 11, the 2 horned beast comes into play. Those who don't know much about the 2 horned beast, you can still go to the video in BSM TV about the 2 horned beast. So that 2 horned beast starts causing the time of trouble such as never. So these are the winds that have been blocked since 1844. But now when the time of trouble, after Michael has stepped on Mount Zion, the 2 horned beast now starts acting. Now let's hear.
The anger of the nations will follow upon the 2 horned beasts' decree that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
That law will come from the two-horned beast. Revelation chapter 13, verse 15.
At the same time, the notorious woman, Babylon the Great, will ride the scarlet-colored beast.
There's
and
a
rule the
video
nations.
on Revelation 17 of the scarlet-colored beast. Go to it and see at the same time that woman will now be, at the same time the notorious woman, Babylon the Great, will ride the scarlet-colored beast. Yeah? Remember how scarlet-colored, it means there is no saints in the Gentile world. They all have been taken to the kingdom. So that's why the color of the beast becomes scarlet-colored with 7 horns and, with 10 horns and 7 heads, all still there, together with the scarlet-colored beast. Now, and then, Revelation chapter 17.
This same crisis will come upon our people in all parts of the world.
That's Testimonies, volume 6, page 395. Yeah?
Yeah.
And let's read from CET 100.3. Let's hear.
A decree went forth to slay the saints, which caused them to cry day and night for deliverance.
So you now know who sent that decree, the two-horned beast.
This was the time of Jacob's trouble.
That's what is called the time of trouble.
Then all the saints cried out with anguish of spirit and were delivered by the voice of God.
There was a voice of God which delivered all saints.
The 144,000 triumphed. Their faces were lighted up with the glory of God.
Right. So at the same time, the voice of God will be there to make sure they are delivered. Which one is the voice of God? The voice of the prophet of that time, Elijah, will be used to warn those who are being saved. Yeah? So we saw that now the decree causes the saints to cry day and night for deliverance, right? And the time of Jacob's trouble, which is in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, is different to the time of trouble such as never was. You know, the time of Jacob's time of trouble and also the time of trouble such as never was, those are different. But let's read ANS 2ANS 92.2.
The anger of the nations cannot therefore be the Armageddon.
No.
For it takes place in the time of the 6th plague, in the wrath of God period. The anger of the nations and the wrath of God are, as we must ever keep in mind, 2 separate and distinct events, one following the other.
Right. So we are told clearly how different these are. The anger of the anger of the nation cannot therefore be the Armageddon, which we find in Revelation 16, verse 12 to 16. That is the time of the plagues. But the anger of the nations and the wrath of God are, as we must ever keep in mind, 2 separate distinctions. We come now where Michael steps on the earth during the time of the anger of the nations. You can see they're fighting each other. That's the time when we should expect Michael. And then the time of Armageddon is in the time of the plagues, which is in Revelation 16, verse 12. Yeah? Now here, let's hear on 93.2, same book, ANS, 2 ANS.
Concerning this anger of the nations, the worldwide confederacy against those who refuse to worship the beast and his image, the Lord predicted through the prophet Zechariah, and in that
Zechariah
day,
12, verse 3.
And in that day,
right,
will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it.
Right. So you see all these are events going to follow which are in the Bible. So Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3. And let's hear again on Zechariah 12, verse 8 to 11. These are events which are still future. In that day,
shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as God, as the angel of the Lord before them.
Why David? Because it's on the throne of David. It's a royal throne of David on Mount Zion. And why be like God? Because Michael, or the Lamb, is on Mount Zion. So these are the two leaders at that time.
And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem, the church. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, because of he died for their sins. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn.
So it's 1 foot for 1,000 now. We have seen it before, that they are going to mourn when they meet Christ. And it is in the time of trouble such as never was. And the two-horned beast will be busy fighting the Lamb. That will be an interesting part to see, because that time of the dark ages, the persecution after the saints seemed as if they are going to lose. But this time of persecution, Christ, or Michael, will be standing on Zion, Mount Zion, with 144,000, and he will be triumphing. That's why the church that is starting in Mount Zion in Jerusalem is the church triumphant, where people will build all the pillars built under the name branch. Now let's hear the army of the 144,000 which are saved. That's when they come up as clad in the armor of Christ's righteousness, as in Prophets and Kings, page 725. Clad in the armor of Christ's righteousness, declares the Spirit of prophecy. The church is to enter upon a final conflict. So when they are like an armor, they are now entering the final conflict of disseminating information to the Gentiles. And there shall be a time of trouble, but they are already empowered on the day of Pentecost when they receive the latter rain, and they are clad as an armor of Christ's righteousness. And then the church is to enter upon a final conflict, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, terrible as an army with banners. She is to go forth into all the world, conquering and to conquer, making sure the truth is heard by everyone. This truth now is going to the Gentiles at that particular time. So it's the sealing time for the Gentiles. Yeah? We'll read more. We could have read more of it that happens in the time of trouble. I can give you all the quotations if you go to BSM TV inbox, and we can complete again the time of trouble in another series as we study more of what is going to happen in the time of trouble. But we should know what we are expecting. We are not expecting yet to go in the clouds. There is all these events which are still future to us, and especially the time of trouble, such as never was. We are still in the time when the four winds are held, so that this time of trouble does not start yet before the 144,000 are completely sealed. So if you want more information, go to BSM TV inbox and you understand more about the time of trouble such as never was. God bless.